I was sitting in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The engine hummed beneath me, but I wasn't driving anywhere. Not yet. I needed a second. Maybe I already knew. Maybe I just didn't want to admit it. The parking lot was dimly lit, the flickering street lamp above casting long, jagged shadows across the pavement. It was the kind of place where people met when they didn't want to be seen. Jessica had told me she was working late. Again. I didn't believe her. Not anymore. I glanced at my phone. 9:47 p.m. My heartbeat was too loud in my ears. My mouth was dry. I had been following her for 20 minutes, keeping my distance, making sure I wasn't seen. And now, here I was, parked outside a cheap motel on the edge of town, staring at her car. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out, tall, confident, like he had nothing to hide. Jessica followed, laughing, tossing her hair, adjusting her dress. I felt like I had been punched in the ribs. The air left my lungs, and for a second, I thought I might be sick. Could have left, driven home, pretended I never saw it. But that wasn't who I was. Not anymore. I threw the truck into park and stepped out. My boots hit the pavement hard, each step faster than the last. I could hear my pulse pounding in my head, the raw, burning anger building with every second. Jessica turned just as I reached them. The second our eyes met, her smile vanished. Jason. Her voice wavered. For the first time in a long time, she actually looked afraid of me. Not because I would hurt her. I never would. But because she knew. She knew she had been caught. The guy next to her, I assumed, didn't even flinch. He just smirked like this was all some big joke. Jessica stepped forward, reaching for me like she could somehow fix this. Jason, I can explain. I cut her off. Don't. Just don't. She hesitated. Then she had the audacity to sigh. Like I was annoying her. Like I was making this difficult. Or folded his arms. Listen, man. I turned to him so fast he actually took a step back. Shut up. My voice was low, steady, and filled with something I barely recognized in myself. His smirk faltered. Jessica stepped between us, her hands up like I was the one crossing a line. Jason, let's be adults about this. I laughed. A short, bitter sound that barely felt real. Adults? I gestured at the motel behind her. Is this what adults do, Jess? She pursed her lips. And then, as if the situation wasn't insane enough, she said the last thing I ever expected. Jason, listen. I think we should talk. But first, you need to calm down. I stared at her. Calm down. She was standing in front of a motel room with another man, adjusting her dress, and she wanted me to calm down. And then she gave me the ultimatum. Jason, I need you to understand something. Her voice was eerily calm now, like she had been preparing for this moment, like she had already made up her mind. Her next words sent a chill through my entire body. Share me, or lose me forever. I blinked. My breath caught in my throat. Did she just... Before I could even process it, she crossed her arms, waiting for my answer like this was some kind of business transaction. And that's when I realized Jessica hadn't just betrayed me. She had planned for this. She had been ready. And she wasn't sorry. Not even a little. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might break. She thought she knew what I was going to do. She had no idea. For a moment I just stood there, staring at her, waiting for the punchline. Because there had to be one, right? No way she actually just said that. No way she actually thought I'd stand here and consider it. But the look on her face told me everything. She wasn't joking. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't even ashamed. Jessica had already decided. Jason, she prompted, like I was wasting her time. And that's when the switch flipped. Everything, the years of love, the trust, the memories, turned into something else. Something dark. Something raw. Because standing in front of me wasn't my wife. It was a stranger. A cold, calculating stranger who had just given me an ultimatum like I was a damn employee she was disciplining. And I wasn't having it. You're serious? I finally said, my voice eerily calm. Jessica's eyes flickered. I think this is the best solution, Jason. For both of us. Both of us? I glanced at her lover, her boyfriend, her whatever the hell he was. He had the nerve to look bored. He even checked his watch. I took a slow step forward, and just like before, the coward took a step back. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to just share you? Jessica exhaled like I was a child struggling with basic math. It's not like that. It's about expanding what we have. Exploring new things. I almost laughed. Exploring new things? She nodded, warming up now. This doesn't have to be a bad thing. We can be honest about our needs. I love you, Jason, but I don't believe in ownership. I need more. Ownership? I repeated, my voice sharper now. She raised her hands, defensive. I'm just saying we can redefine what our relationship is. You wouldn't lose me. You'd gain something. I looked at R. And he's part of the package, huh? R smirked again like he had already won. Like this was some game he had beaten me at. Jessica and I have something special, he said. But she still loves you, man. It's just a new kind of love. A new kind of love. A new kind of love. I ran a hand over my face, laughing under my breath. Because this was insanity. This wasn't my wife trying to fix our marriage. This wasn't some desperate plea for a second chance. This was her rewriting the rules to suit herself. Jessica wasn't asking for permission. She was telling me how it was going to be, and that's what made my blood boil the most. Not the betrayal. Not even the disrespect. It was the audacity. I turned back to Jessica. So that's it? If I don't go along with this, I lose you forever? She nodded. No hesitation. Something inside me snapped. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone. What are you doing? She asked. I didn't answer. I just called her mother. Her face drained of color. Jason, stop. I held up a finger. Hey, Linda? My voice was too loud on purpose. Yeah, it's Jason. Sorry for the late call. Listen, I just wanted to let you know that your daughter just gave me an ultimatum. Either I share her with another man, or I lose her forever. Linda's gasp was audible through the speaker. Jessica lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. Jason, hang up the phone. She hissed, her voice full of real panic now. Or even looked nervous, like he hadn't expected me to involve her family. But I wasn't done. Yeah, Linda, I continued, raising my voice so Jessica couldn't talk over me. I'm standing outside a motel right now. She just walked out of a room with some guy. Thought you should know what your daughter's been up to. Jessica screamed. Not a cry, not a sob. A full-on, rage-fueled scream that made heads turn. She grabbed my arm, nails digging into my skin. Jason, you're being a child. I pulled free. No, Jessica. I'm being a man who refuses to be played for a fool. Linda was still on the line, demanding answers. I ignored her for now. Jessica was shaking. Why would you do that? Why would you call my mother? Oh, I'm calling more than just her. I turned back to my phone, tapping my screen. Jessica's eyes went wide. You wouldn't. I smirked. And then, in front of her and her lover, I sent the evidence to our family group chat. Every single message. Every photo I had taken of them. Every receipt. Everything. Jessica made a choking sound. Oh my God. Her phone blew up instantly, notifications flooding in. Calls. Messages. Her entire family now knew. And that was just the beginning. Jessica was hyperventilating. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her phone, scrolling through the explosion of messages. I could see her family's names lighting up her screen, her mother, her father, her sister, even her grandmother. Her perfect little secret, gone. And she wasn't ready for it. You, her voice cracked as she looked up at me, her face pale with shock. You ruined my life. I raised an eyebrow. I ruined your life? She clenched her jaw, shaking with fury. Her breath hitched as she struggled to find the words. You just outed our private relationship problems to my entire family. I scoffed. Private relationship problems? I gestured to the motel behind her, the man standing next to her, the entire disgusting situation she had created. Jessica, you gave me a choice. Share you or lose you. And guess what? You just lost everything. Her breathing got heavier, angrier. Her phone rang again. Her mother. Jessica hesitated, looking at me, then at R, then back at me. I could see the calculations happening in her head. Her usual tactic would be to lie, to manipulate, to twist the story. But how could she, when I had just dropped a bomb of evidence in front of everyone who ever mattered to her? Still, she answered. Mom. I could hear Linda screaming through the speaker. Not just yelling. Screaming. Jessica flinched, closing her eyes as if that would block out the rage pouring into her ear. No, it's not what you think. Jason's making it sound worse than it is. I laughed. Oh really? So I imagined you walking out of a motel with another man? I made up the texts you sent him? Jessica shot me a death glare. But she didn't hang up. Her mother wasn't letting up. And then Linda demanded to speak to me. Jessica looked like she had been punched in the gut. Mom, that's not necessary, too late. I was already reaching for the phone. Jessica jerked back like a wild animal. No, you don't need to, but I was faster. I snatched the phone right out of her hand and pressed it to my ear. Hey Linda, I said, watching Jessica's face twist in horror. Jason, Linda snapped. Tell me the truth. All of it. I turned slightly, making sure Jessica and R could hear every single word. Jessica has been cheating on me for months, I said, loud and clear. And tonight, when I caught her, she told me I had two options. Share her or lose her forever. Linda went silent. Completely, utterly silent. And then she said something that even I wasn't expecting. Put me on speaker. Jessica's eyes bulged. No, I smirked. Sure thing. I hit speaker. And Linda unleashed hell. Jessica Marie Wilson. What the hell is wrong with you? Jessica winced. She physically winced like she had just been slapped through the phone. Mom. Please. Don't you mom me. You gave your husband an ultimatum? After cheating on him. Jessica blushed furiously, her hands curling into fists. Mom. It's not. It is what it looks like. Linda roared. You are an absolute disgrace. Your father is reading these messages right now. And do you know what he just said? He doesn't want to claim you as his daughter anymore. Jessica staggered back. What? He said. Linda continued, her voice shaking with rage, that if you think marriage is some playground where you get to humiliate your husband, then you can find a new damn family. Jessica turned to me, eyes wide with panic. Jason, please, tell them it's not. I folded my arms. Not what? Not exactly what happened. Jessica's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She was cornered. And then R had the audacity to speak up. Okay, this is getting out of hand, he said, stepping forward like this was his moment to mediate. Linda, I think we all just need to take a deep breath and… Linda wasn't having it. Who the hell is this? R straightened. I'm R. I don't give a damn who you are. Linda snapped. You are standing outside a motel with my married daughter. You're a disgrace. You're a homewrecker. You're a… And then, in a moment that will forever be burned into my memory, Linda hit him with the kill shot. How old are you? You pathetic little boy. R's confidence shattered on the spot. Jessica froze. I looked between them, realization dawning. He was younger than her. A lot younger. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about cheating. Jessica wasn't just looking for more. She was chasing validation. Chasing the feeling of being wanted. Chasing the thrill of a new man who looked at her like she was exciting again. She was afraid of getting older. And she thought I wouldn't notice. Jessica's face turned red. This isn't… Linda wasn't finished. You listen to me, Jessica, she hissed. You are going to get your ass home, and you are going to BG Jason to even look at you again. Because right now, I wouldn't blame him if he threw you to the damn streets. Jessica gasped. Mom, do you hear me? Jessica didn't answer. She was humiliated. Her face was a mix of rage, fear, and complete disbelief. And then I said the words that sealed the deal. I'm not going home with her, Linda, I said. Jessica made her choice. And now, she can deal with the consequences. Jessica's jaw dropped. Wait, what? I handed her back her phone, turned on my heel, and walked away. Because this was only the beginning of her downfall that I walked back to my truck without looking back. I could still hear Jessica's voice. High-pitched, frantic, calling my name. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to, because I already knew. Jessica wasn't calling me because she wanted to fix this. She wasn't chasing me down out of regret or love. She was panicking. Her world was falling apart, and she had no control over it. And the best part? She had done it to herself. I yanked open my truck door, slid into the driver's seat, and slammed it shut. My hands were shaking with adrenaline. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. But I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was free. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. And that's when I saw her. Jessica had bolted across the parking lot, her heels clicking against the pavement, her phone still clutched in her hand. I trailed behind her, looking completely lost, like he had no idea what to do. Good. Let him deal with her now. She banged on my window, her eyes wild. Jason, we need to talk. I rolled the window down an inch. Talk? I said, raising an eyebrow. About what? How you planned on playing me like a fool while you screwed your little boy toy over there. She winced at my words. That's when I knew this wasn't part of her plan. Jessica had expected outrage. She had expected me to beg, to scream, to threaten. She had never expected indifference. And it was killing her. Jason. She tried again, her voice softening. Look, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I laughed. A real sharp, bitter laugh. You didn't mean for what to happen, Jessica? I asked. Getting caught? Humiliating yourself in front of your entire family? Or were you talking about cheating in the first place? Her lips parted, but she had no answer. Because there wasn't one. I tilted my head. Wait, let me guess. You're about to say it was a mistake, right? That it didn't mean anything? She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes now. No, Jason, I cut her off. It meant something to you, I said, my voice low and sharp. It meant so much that you were willing to throw everything away for it. Jessica's breath hitched. I saw it, the flicker of realization. The moment she finally understood just how deep she had dug this grave. But I wasn't done. You want to know the worst part? I continued, keeping my tone calm, deliberate. It's not even the cheating. It's not even that you lied. It's the fact that when you got caught, you didn't even try to fix it. You didn't even apologize. Instead, you looked me in the eye and said, share me or lose me forever. Jessica flinched like I had physically hit her. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what I thought. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. Jason, please, let's just go home and talk. I turned my key in the ignition. The truck rumbled to life. Jessica, I said, gripping the wheel, you don't have a home with me anymore. And then, I drove away, leaving her standing in that empty parking lot, watching as I disappeared into the night. But it wasn't over. Not even close. The first call came at midnight. I was sitting in my apartment, the one I had gotten just in case. I had signed the lease months ago, when I first started noticing the red flags with Jessica. When the late nights started. When she started keeping secrets. Deep down, I must have known this day was coming. And I was prepared. I glanced at my phone. Jessica. I let it ring. The second call came 2 minutes later. Then a third. Then a text. Jason, please answer. I need to talk to you. I stared at it. Then another. I'm sorry. Okay? Just please talk to me. Sorry. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. It was too late for sorry. But then she sent the last text. I think I made a mistake. I smiled. Because now it was her turn to suffer. I stared at the text on my screen for a long moment, letting the words sink in. I think I made a mistake. No, Jessica didn't think she made a mistake. She knew. She just never expected to be on the losing end of it. And now she wanted to undo it. But life doesn't work that way. I turned my phone over, screen down, and leaned back in my chair. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. But I liked it that way. No Jessica. No lies. No ultimatums. Just me and the sound of my own breathing. I wasn't going to reply. Not yet. Let her sit with it. Let her feel the weight of her own choices. Let her drown in the same silence she gave me for months. I turned on the TV, flipping through channels, trying to focus on anything else. But I knew better. Jessica wasn't going to let this go. And I was right. The pounding on my door started 20 minutes later. I didn't even flinch. I took my time getting up, stretching my arms, rolling my neck. Then, finally, I walked over and unlocked the door. Jessica stood there, her face a wreck. Her hair was tangled, her mascara smudged. She wasn't even wearing shoes. Just some ratty socks and one of my old hoodies. I didn't say anything. I just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and waited. She swallowed hard, her eyes searching mine. Jason. Nothing. No reaction. Just a blank stare. She shifted nervously, wringing her hands like a guilty child caught stealing. Please, can we talk? I let the silence stretch out, watching her squirm under the weight of it. Then finally I said, talk. Her lip quivered. Can I come in? I didn't move. She exhaled sharply. Jason, please. I don't know what I was thinking. I was stupid, okay? I was selfish. I was a liar, I cut in. She flinched. A cheater, I added. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I know. A coward. Her breath hitched. Jason, you weren't sorry when I caught you. I said, my voice calm. Too calm. You weren't sorry when you walked out of that motel with him. You weren't sorry when you looked me in the eye and told me to share you or lose you forever. She winced, her whole body shaking now. You only became sorry, I continued, when you realized you lost. Jessica squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head violently. No, that's not true. Then why are you here? I asked. She froze. You made your choice, Jessica, I said, stepping forward. You wanted him. You wanted the thrill. You wanted a man who made you feel young again. So why aren't you with him? Jessica broke. Her face crumbled, and the tears poured out. Because I was wrong, she sobbed. I was so wrong, Jason. I thought it would make me happy. I thought I needed more. But all I did was destroy the only thing that ever mattered. I stared at her, unmoved. Please, she whispered. I need you. I love you. I stopped. She choked on her own breath, startled by how sharp my voice was. I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to hear every word. You don't love me, Jessica, I said. You love what I gave you. You love that I made you feel safe. You love that I took care of you. You love that I was always there. And when you thought you could get that from someone else, you threw me away. Jessica shook her head violently. No, Jason, but he didn't want to keep you, did he? Depressed. Jessica's face turned to pure devastation. There it was. The truth. Or hadn't wanted anything serious. He had wanted the chase, the fun, the fantasy. But when it was time to actually be with her, to actually commit, he had bailed. And now she was alone. Jessica fell apart in front of me, covering her face with her hands as she sobbed. But I just stood there, watching, waiting, letting her feel every second of her own destruction. Finally, when the sobbing turned to soft, hiccuping breaths, she looked up at me with those red, swollen eyes and whispered, Jason, is there any way at all, that you can forgive me? I tilted my head. Then I smiled and shut the door in her face. The second the door clicked shut, the pounding started again. Jason, please. Her fists slammed against the wood, desperate, frantic. She wasn't crying anymore. She was screaming, her voice raw with panic. I stood on the other side, arms crossed, watching the door shake with every blow. This was it. This was Jessica at rock bottom. The moment she finally understood that there was no fixing this, that she had thrown away everything for some meaningless thrill. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just satisfaction. Because for the first time in years, I was in control. And Jessica? She was the one begging. Thump, thump, thump. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Jessica, go home. No, she sobbed. Jason, please. I could hear her voice breaking, the hysteria setting in. She wasn't just scared. She was terrified. Not of me, of what came next, of the consequences. I let her cry for another minute. Then, finally, I pulled the door open. She stumbled forward, almost falling at my feet. Her eyes were wild, her breathing erratic. Jason, she gasped, grabbing my shirt like I was the last piece of solid ground in her sinking world. Please don't do this. I'll do anything to fix this. Just tell me what to do. I peeled her fingers off me one by one and stepped back. You can't fix this, Jessica, I said coldly. She shook her head violently. Yes, I can. Just let you what? I cut in, my voice sharp. Let you lie your way out of this? Let you manipulate me into taking you back? Let you rewrite history so that you're the victim? Jessica flinched like I had slapped her. And that's when it hit me. She hadn't expected this reaction. Not from me. Jessica had always been in control. She had always known exactly what to say, what to do, to get back on top. But tonight, she was powerless. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Jason, I just need you to listen. I folded my arms. Go ahead. Explain. Jessica inhaled sharply, trying to steady herself. I wasn't happy, she started, her voice barely a whisper. I felt like I was trapped in this perfect life we built, but I wasn't living anymore. I was just existing. I said nothing. She took that as a sign to keep going. I thought maybe if I had something new, something exciting, it would make me feel alive again. I scoffed. So cheating was your solution? Jessica wiped at her face. I know it was wrong. I know I hurt you. But I never stopped loving you, Jason. Never. It was just a phase? I cut in, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She blinked. An accident? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I nodded. Yeah, that's what I thought. Jessica panicked. She lunged forward again, grabbing my hands. Please, just give me a chance to prove that I can be better. I stared down at her hands, clutching mine like a lifeline. And for a brief moment I remembered the good years. The laughter, the late-night talks, the way she used to look at me like I was the only man in the world. But that man was gone. Jessica had killed him the second she gave me that ultimatum. I gently pulled my hands away. You want a chance to prove yourself? I asked. Jessica nodded eagerly, hope flashing in her eyes. I leaned in slightly, my voice low, then prove it to someone else. And with that, I stepped back and closed the door in her face. Again, silence. No knocking, no crying, just silence. For the first time that night, Jessica didn't fight back. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just stood there. And then, slowly, I heard her footsteps retreat down the hall. She was gone. And I felt lighter than I had in years. But this wasn't the end. Because Jessica, she wasn't done yet. The silence didn't last long. I should have known. Jessica wasn't the kind of woman who accepted defeat. She was the type who clawed her way out of every hole she dug. No matter how deep, no matter how much dirt she had to shovel onto someone else. So, when she walked away from my door without a fight, I knew it wasn't over. And I was right. Because at 6:13 a.m., my phone blew up. First, a call from her mother. I let it ring. Then, her sister. Ignored. Then one from my boss. That one made me pause. I stared at the screen, something in my gut twisting. Jessica would she? I answered. Jason. His voice was tight. Yeah, you need to come in. Now. My jaw clenched. Why? A pause. Then Jessica just called HR. I shut my eyes, exhaling slowly. Of course she did. Of course, the second begging didn't work. She went straight for destruction. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. The office showdown by the time I got to work. The place was buzzing. People stared as I walked past. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. I could feel it, the weight of something big pressing down on the entire building. Jessica had set the fire, and now everyone was standing around, watching the flames. HR was waiting for me. So was my boss. I sat down, arms crossed. Let me guess, I said. Jessica filed some kind of complaint? HR exchanged looks. My boss sighed. She called first thing this morning. Said she needed to report ongoing emotional abuse and controlling behavior from you. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that made them shift in their seats. Let me get this straight, I said, leaning forward. She cheats on me. Catch her. I refused to take her back. And now I'm the abuser? HR cleared her throat. She also claimed you had been financially manipulative, that you isolated her from family, that you were excessively jealous and monitored her whereabouts. My boss rubbed his temples. He knew this was all bullshit, but corporate policy meant they had to investigate anyway. Do you have any proof to counter her claims? HR asked, her voice flat. I smirked and pulled out my phone. Oh, I have plenty of proof. And then, I laid it all out. Every message, every voicemail, every text where Jessica had begged me to take her back. Every damn receipt proving that not only was I not controlling, but I had actually given her more freedom than she deserved. I showed them the group chat, the one where Jessica's own family had torn her apart for what she did. HR's expression changed real fast. My boss skimmed through the messages, then sighed heavily. Yeah. This is enough. HR nodded. We'll be dismissing the complaint. I could tell she hated that Jessica had wasted her time. My boss, though? He wasn't done. Jason, he said, steepling his fingers. Off the record, you might want to consider taking legal action. What she did, that's borderline defamation. I nodded. Trust me, I'm already ahead of you. And with that, I got up and walked out. Past the whispers, past the wide eyes, straight to my lawyer's office. The legal bomb. Jessica thought she could burn my life down. She thought she could trap me in her mess. What she didn't realize, I was holding the match. By noon, my lawyer had drafted a cease and desist letter, warning Jessica to immediately retract her false statements or face a full-blown lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress. We sent it to her email, her work email, because I knew exactly where she'd be when she got it. And sure enough, at 12:42 p.m., Jessica called me. I let it ring. She called again. Ignored. Then, she texted. What is this, Jason? A lawyer? Really? I didn't reply. You're actually trying to ruin my life now? Oh, sweetheart. I wasn't trying. I was succeeding. And the best part? Jessica still hadn't realized just how far I was willing to go. Jessica's texts kept coming. Each one more frantic, more unhinged than the last. Jason, please, just talk to me. We can fix this. We don't have to do this. You don't actually want to sue me, do you? Jason, answer me. Now. I sat back in my chair, watching my phone screen light up over and over again. And I did nothing. Because the truth was, Jessica wasn't panicking because she regretted what she had done. She was panicking because, for the first time in her life, she was losing. And I was just getting started. Her final attempt at control by 3 p.m. I got the text I had been waiting for. I'm coming over. We need to talk. You owe me that much. I laughed. I owed her nothing. But if she wanted to talk, fine, let's talk. I didn't reply. I just left the door unlocked and waited. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Jessica stormed into my apartment like she still had a right to be here. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were wild. And she had this desperate, manic energy that I had never seen before. Jason. She slammed the door behind her, turning to face me like she was about to deliver some life-changing speech. You have to stop this. Right now. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Stop what? She took a step forward. This insanity. The lawyer. The lawsuit. You don't actually want to do this. We were married, Jason. We can fix this. I tilted my head, amused. Fix this? Jessica nodded rapidly. Yes. I made a mistake. Okay? A huge one. I got caught up in something I didn't understand, and I let it spiral out of control, but I held up a hand. Let me stop you right there. Jessica froze. I leaned forward, my voice calm. Too calm. You didn't make a mistake, Jessica. You made a choice. She stilled, her breath catching in her throat. You chose to cheat, I continued, my tone deadly even. You chose to lie. You chose to walk out of a motel with another man and give me an ultimatum like I was some pathetic little dog you expected to roll over and obey. Her face twisted in pain. Jason, you chose to call my job and try to ruin my career. Jessica flinched. You chose to paint yourself as the victim, hoping people would turn against me. Tears welled up in her eyes. I smirked. And now that everything has backfired? Now that you're the one losing everything? I shook my head. Now you want to fix things? Jessica let out a broken sob, her hands clutching at her chest like she was physically in pain. I love you, Jason, she choked out. I never stopped. Please, just give me a chance. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Then I laughed. A slow, deliberate, cruel laugh that made her stagger back. You don't love me, Jessica, I said simply. You love control. And right now, you have none. Jessica crumbled. Right there, in the middle of my apartment, she collapsed onto her knees, full-on sobbing. I have nothing left, Jason, she wailed, grabbing at my leg like some desperate beggar. Please, just Just tell me what to do. I'll do anything. Anything. I looked down at her, and for the first time, I realized something. I didn't feel anything for her anymore. Not love. Not hatred. Not even satisfaction. Just nothing. She was pathetic. A ghost of the woman I once knew. And I was done. I stood up, shaking her off me like she was dirt under my shoe. You wanted freedom, Jessica? I said, walking to the door and pulling it open. Congratulations. You got it. She stared at me, broken and silent. Now get out. And this time, she listened. Jessica didn't move at first. She just sat there on my floor, her breath hitching, her fingers digging into the carpet like she was physically anchoring herself to this moment. Like if she let go, she'd fall into some endless void. Maybe she already had. I stood by the open door, arms crossed, waiting. Because this was it. The final moment. The last time I'd ever let her be in my space. In my life. Anywhere near my peace. You're serious? She whispered, her voice hollow. I just stared at her. Jessica exhaled sharply, running a hand through her tangled hair. Jason, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But please don't do this. We were married for years. That means something, doesn't it? I tilted my head, pretending to think. It did. Before you threw it away for a cheap motel and a boy who didn't even want to keep you. She flinched like I'd stabbed her. Good. Jessica slowly climbed to her feet, wobbling slightly. You really don't care anymore, do you? I shrugged. No, I really don't. Her lip quivered. You're just walking away? I smirked. Jessica, you walked away the second you told me to share you or lose you forever. I just finally made my choice. She shook her head, blinking rapidly, like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare. But this was real, and she had lost. Jessica took a slow step toward the door, then stopped. Her hands balled into fists. You know what? She said suddenly, her voice rising. Fine. You win, Jason. You get to be the bigger person. The guy who walked away while I hit rock bottom. Congratulations. I raised an eyebrow. You think this is a game? She laughed bitterly. Isn't it? You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me break. Watching me suffer. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. No, Jessica. You're not suffering because of me. You're suffering because of you. Because of the choices you made. Because you thought you could control the game and when you realized you couldn't. I let a beat of silence stretch out. You lost your damn mind. Jessica's breathing turned shaky. I could tell she wanted to scream, to lash out, to throw one final punch that would land. But there was nothing left to hit. She had already burned the bridge. And now she was standing on ash. Jessica looked at me one last time. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I saw it. Acceptance. She knew. She knew I wasn't coming back. She knew there were no more second chances. This was over. Jessica sucked in a slow breath, wiped her face, and straightened her shoulders. Then she walked past me, out the door, and into the hallway. She didn't look back. And that's how I knew it was finally, completely over. But there was one last loose end. The final message that night, after Jessica was gone for good. I did the last thing I needed to do. I pulled out my phone and typed a message. Not to her. To the guy who helped destroy my marriage. The guy who smirked in my face. The guy who thought this was all just a game. I kept it simple. You can have her now. Enjoy. Then I blocked his number. And for the first time in a long, long time, I slept like a king. For the first time in months, I woke up feeling free. No gut-wrenching anxiety. No hollow ache in my chest. No obsessive overthinking about what Jessica was doing or who she was with. Just silence. Peaceful, glorious silence. I rolled over, stretched out in bed, and checked my phone out of habit. No missed calls. No desperate texts. No more manipulative pleas disguised as apologies. Jessica was gone. And that should have been the end. But life always has one last twist. The message I never expected it happened 3 days later. I was out grabbing coffee when my phone vibrated with a notification. A text from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it, but something in my gut told me to check. And when I did, I nearly spit out my drink. Because the message, it wasn't from Jessica. It was from R. You were right. She's a nightmare. I need to talk to you. I just stared at the screen, eyebrows raised. So, Jessica finally sank her claws into him. And apparently, it didn't take long for the honeymoon phase to crash and burn. I smirked, shaking my head. Could have ignored it, blocked him, moved on. But honestly, I was curious. So I sent one word back. Talk. The response came instantly. Can we meet? Oh, this was going to be good. The meetup, we agreed to meet at a local bar. Neutral ground. I wasn't going there as his friend. I wasn't going there for revenge. I was going for one reason only, to hear exactly how badly Jessica had ruined his life. I showed up first, ordered a drink, and leaned back in my chair. Then, 5 minutes later, I walked in, and the second I saw him, I knew Jessica had wrecked him. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, disheveled hair, the confidence completely drained from his face. He sat down across from me, rubbing his face with both hands, and then, he just sighed. Man, he muttered, shaking his head. I messed up. I took a sip of my drink, waiting. I exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. I thought I was getting this fun, wild, independent woman, you know? Someone exciting. Someone different. I raised an eyebrow, and he let out a dry, humorless laugh. And she's **ing lunatic. ***, I just smirked. Tell me something I don't know. I leaned forward, lowering his voice. Dude, she's obsessed with me. And not in a cute way. In a texting me 50 times a day, showing up unannounced, checking my location kind of way. I chuckled, shaking my head. Let me guess. The second she realized she didn't have control over you, she lost it? His face went pale. How did you? I laughed, leaning back. Because that's who she is, man. She doesn't love people. She owns them. And when they stop playing along. I tapped my glass. She spirals. Or looked physically sick. You should have seen her after you shut her out, he muttered. She was a mess. Crying, screaming, breaking things. And then he swallowed hard. Then she turned on me. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that tracks. Or stared down at the table. She told me I was her only chance at happiness now. That she had given up everything for me. That if I left, she'd have nothing. His voice dropped. And then she started threatening to ruin my life. I wasn't surprised. I just took another sip of my drink. So what do you want from me? I ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, man. Advice? A warning? Maybe just someone who understands. I exhaled slowly, setting my glass down. Here's my advice, I said, voice calm. Get out. Now. Before she drags you down with her. I rubbed his face. I can't just, I interrupted. You just don't want to deal with the fallout. He looked away. I leaned forward. Let me guess. She's already turned people against you. Made herself the victim. Started twisting the story so you're the bad guy now. His jaw clenched. I laughed. Yeah, that's what she does. And you? You let her do it to me. You stood there, smirking, while she tore my life apart. You played along because it benefited you. Or swallowed hard. I didn't know it was like that. I shrugged. And now? You're next. He was silent, because he knew I was right. Jessica had already started the process. And soon, he'd be in the same position I was. I stood up, tossing some cash on the table. You wanted my advice? Here it is. Run. Cut her off completely. Move if you have to. Because Jessica, she doesn't let go until she's got nothing left to cling to. Or just sat there, staring at the table, his hands clenched into fists. I clapped him on the shoulder as I walked past. Good luck, man. You're gonna need it. And then, I walked out, because this wasn't my problem anymore. Jessica had finally found someone else to destroy. And for the first time in years, I was free. I thought that was it. I thought I was done. Jessica was out of my life. I was learning his lesson the hard way. And me? I was finally completely free. But Jessica? She wasn't finished yet. Because 1 week later, she made her final move. And this time, she came after everything I had left. The legal ambush, it started with a letter. I was at work when I got the email from my lawyer. Subject line, urgent, legal action from Jessica Wilson. I clicked it, my pulse spiking. Jessica had officially filed a motion for spousal support. Spousal support. I stared at the email, barely breathing. This woman, this cheating, manipulative, destructive woman, had the nerve to try and take my money after she destroyed our marriage? I read the document. Her claims were laughable. She stated that I had abandoned her with no financial support, that I had emotionally damaged her, making it difficult for her to work, that she had sacrificed her career to be my wife and now needed compensation. Compensation for cheating on me, for trying to humiliate me, for blowing up my life and then demanding a paycheck. I clenched my jaw, my vision blurring with rage. She wanted to turn this into a war? Fine. I had one last bullet left in the chamber. And this time, I wasn't just going to win. I was going to annihilate her. The courtroom showdown 2 weeks later. We stood in court. Jessica sat across from me, looking perfectly put together, like a grieving victim instead of the woman who had walked out of a motel with another man and told me to share her or lose her forever. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, looked over the documents. Jessica's lawyer started his speech. Your Honor, my client has suffered immensely due to the abrupt and cold abandonment by her husband. She was left financially stranded, emotionally shattered, and unable to move forward with her life. We are requesting a fair and reasonable spousal support amount to ensure that she can rebuild. I raised a hand. Your Honor? The judge glanced at me. Mr. Carter? I stood up, adjusting my tie. Before we continue, I'd like to submit evidence that directly contradicts these claims. Jessica's face drained of color. Her lawyer turned. Objection, Your Honor. He has not previously disclosed. The judge held up a hand. I'll allow it. Mr. Carter, proceed. I handed the bailiff a thick stack of printed screenshots, emails, text messages. Everything. Every text from Jessica admitting to the affair. Every begging voicemail where she tried to manipulate me into taking her back. The group chat receipts where her own family disowned her. The messages from R, admitting she had already moved on before the divorce was even final. And finally, a financial report, showing that Jessica had already been living with another man for months. The judge flipped through the documents, her expression hardening. Jessica's lawyer started sputtering. Jessica? She just sat there, frozen, like she had just realized the train she was riding had just gone off a cliff. The judge set the papers down. Then she looked Jessica dead in the eye. Mrs. Wilson, she said, voice cold, after reviewing this evidence, I find that your claims are not only misleading but deliberately dishonest. Jessica shrunk in her seat. The judge turned to me. Mr. Carter, do you wish to file for damages for the fraudulent claim against you? I didn't even hesitate. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to sue for emotional distress and legal fees. Jessica gasped. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. The judge nodded. Motion granted. Mrs. Wilson, not only will your request for spousal support be denied, but you are now responsible for paying your ex-husband's legal fees. Jessica made a choking sound. But the judge ignored her. This case is closed. The final nail in her coffin. I walked out of that courtroom free. Jessica? She walked out owing me thousands. And as I watched her collapse onto a bench outside, her head in her hands, her entire body shaking with quiet sobs, I felt nothing. Because this was exactly what she deserved. Jessica had tried one last time to control me, to use me, to trap me, but in the end, she had only destroyed herself. And me? I was finally, completely, and utterly free. Jessica sat on the courthouse bench, her head in her hands, her entire body trembling with quiet sobs. She had lost everything. No money, no control, no sympathy, just humiliation and consequences. Two things she had never expected to face. And I should have walked away. I should have left her there, drowning in the wreckage she created. But something inside me told me to end it properly. So I walked over and stood in front of her. Jessica slowly lifted her head. Her face was ruined, streaked with mascara, eyes swollen from crying, lips trembling. For the first time since this entire nightmare started, she looked truly broken. She looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Hope? Regret? Desperation? It didn't matter. It was too late. She swallowed hard. Jason. I shoved my hands in my pockets, watching her carefully. Yeah. Her breath hitched. Can we just talk? I tilted my head. Talk about what, Jessica? She wiped at her face, sniffing. Everything. I chuckled, shaking my head. Jessica, we've done nothing but talk. You talked when I caught you cheating. You talked when I refused to take you back. You talked when you tried to ruin my life. She flinched. I crouched down in front of her, resting my arms on my knees. You don't want to talk, I said, my voice calm. You want a do-over. You want to erase everything you did and go back to the way things were before. Tears welled up in her eyes. Don't you? I pressed. You want me to pretend that motel never happened. That our never happened. That you never gave me that insane ultimatum like I was some desperate idiot who would actually say yes. Jessica let out a small, broken sob. That's not fair, she whispered. I smirked. Oh, but it was fair when you backed me into a corner? When you tried to ruin my career? When you tried to take my money? She shook her head rapidly. Jason, please. I just need one chance to prove to you that I laughed. And this time, it wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was pure amusement. Jessica, I said, shaking my head, you don't get second chances after what you did. You don't get to fix this. You don't get to have me. She froze, her entire body going still. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. And then, her face changed. The devastation faded. The regret disappeared. And in its place, that cold, calculating woman resurfaced. Her lips pressed into a thin line. So that's it? She asked. You're just done? I nodded. Yeah, I am. She exhaled sharply, straightening up. Her tears dried instantly, as if she had flipped a switch. And suddenly, she wasn't a broken woman anymore. She was angry. Her jaw clenched. You know what? Fine. I don't need you anyway. You think you're better than me now, Jason? You think you're some kind of hero? I smirked. No, Jessica. I just think I'm finally free. Her nostrils flared. For a split second, I saw pure hatred in her eyes. She wanted to say something cruel, something vicious, but she didn't, because she knew it wouldn't matter. She had already lost. Jessica took a shaky breath, lifted her chin, and without another word, she turned around and walked away. And this time, I didn't watch her go. I just turned in the opposite direction, stepped outside into the warm sun, and breathed in the crisp, clean air of a life without her. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, undeniably alive.